Remnant from the Ashes is an excellent example of how to do a Souls-inspired game with its own unique style, twist, and spirit. And it was one of my favorite games of its day, especially playing it co-op with my good friend Dante. And now, Remnant 2 is here and is apparently literally the same game but better in every way. And everyone's singing its praises, including a lot of people saying it could actually be Game of the Year. And while I don't think that's necessarily going to happen, I have to say, I agree with that initial sentiment. Let's talk about it. Hello everyone, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. If you enjoy what I do, you find this video entertaining or informative, or you just enjoy what I do in general, then please do leave a like and subscribe. YouTube is my full-time career, and I need all the help I can get to continue to grow the channel. Thank you. Remnant 2 has released as of a couple of days ago into full access. It was in its early access period for pre-orders a couple days prior to that. And I now have my hands on it. I've played the game for about 6 hours, 3.5-ish with my friend Dante in co-op on stream, and then a couple hours off stream experimenting with a different type of character and just getting more of a feel for the game without talking to chat and talking to Dante. I can just sit and focus, and that's the gameplay that you're seeing here. And I have to say, it feels like I'm just playing more Remnant from the Ashes, and that's all I could ever ask for. Yet, it looks better, it feels better, the voice acting is better, there's more gameplay, there's more mechanics, there's new worlds, new enemies, and this is all stuff that I recognized, and I've barely scratched the surface of the game. If you didn't know, Remnant, made by Gunfire Games, is actually the third game in their series in this world. First was Chronos, which is actually a VR game that sets up the overall mythos of the world. Then you have Remnant from the Ashes, and now Remnant 2. And while Chronos is its own unique beast, it's like a third-person, like action adventure sort of puzzle game with weird, unique mechanics and stuff like that. Remnant 1 and 2 are very much Dark Souls with guns, is probably how you've heard it described. And I've seen a lot of people who say they know nothing about the game beyond it just being that Dark Souls game, but with guns. And while that's true, you have bonfires and a stamina bar and essentially Estus flasks and all that type of stuff, but instead of using primarily melee, you do have a melee, you primarily use guns of various types. Narrowing the game down to just Dark Souls with guns is doing it a massive disservice. Remnant has so much going for it as a third-person shooter that makes it completely unique from other Dark Souls, Soulsborne-inspired games or Soulsborne clones out there. The whole idea is that you are a traveler, and you are being warped between different worlds by these world stones. And what's very cool about the way Remnant does stuff is you never quite know where you're going to wind up. As I mentioned, I started 2 characters, and the first character that I played on stream with Dante went to this very almost Bloodborne-esque, dark, post-apocalyptic Victorian London-looking city, infested by either crazy or zombified or in some other way malformed, mutated elfin creatures that otherwise seemed to have had a society here before whatever happened befell them. We were fighting through this whole area, getting hints at the greater story, and interacting with godly characters who are bemused by us, but otherwise not perturbed and offer to help us on our journey, learning about the creatures that are causing this apocalyptic scenario for the elves in this area, or the Dran, as I believe they're actually called, from what I've seen of the lore. And it was all really, really cool. It felt like starting Remnant 1, where we got in and you started fighting basic enemies and learning about the game, and you encounter some mini-bosses and all that type of stuff. What was interesting was when I started my second character. When I started my second character, I went to the same world, but instead of in the dark, dingy, flame-filled, sort of zombie-infested streets of this Victorian London-esque setting, I wound up in a completely different part of the world where I was fighting and encountering right off the bat these almost angelic beings that Dante and I had only started to encounter near the end of our play session, and that seemed to be the fey creatures that are preying on these elves, that seemed to be the ones causing this apocalyptic scenario for them. And yet I just got dropped right into fighting them with my new character, running through their halls and their courts and everything, and it felt completely natural. It's not like I missed something. I didn't skip anything. The game just dropped me there. And that seems to be the running idea. When you start a new character and you start a new run, you never know where you're going to get dropped in the overall game world. But the way that Gunfire Games has set up Remnant systems, the game just flows with it. You find gear, you find accessories, you level up, the enemies are scaled to you, and no matter where you start, it feels like you're supposed to be there. And that's so cool. Because with any sort of like FromSoft game, you start where you start. Right? If you're starting Elden Ring, you start in Limgrave, and you walk out of the church, and you see Vare, and you see the Tree Sentinel, and you just go. And you can choose where you go from there, but it's still a set starting point with only so many different places that you can go. Same thing with, say, Dark Souls 1. You start in the Asylum, fight your way through it, get to Firelink Shrine, move on to the Undead Burg. If you're feeling bold, you could maybe go into, like, the Catacombs, but the majority of people are going to go right to the Undead Burg, and that's how every run of Dark Souls starts. Does not seem to be the case with Remnant 2. And that leads me into the second point that makes it very interesting and very unique. Remnant, and now Remnant 2, are games that take roguelike systems and incorporate them into the Soulsborne third-person shooter style that they have going on. And while there are a lot of you out there who probably don't like roguelikes, I've had a few people in chat saying, like, oh, roguelike mechanics, I'm not sure how I feel about that. This is not a system where you, like, die and you have to restart your whole run with different modifiers and all that type of stuff. That's not how this works. You die, you go back to the last bonfire that you were at, or the last crystal, enemies respawn, and you go again, just like Dark Souls. The roguelike element of it comes from random drops and random setups of, like, dungeons, and now what worlds you get access to in what order. And that's going to make things very, very interesting, and I think it's going to allow for an even greater layer, or level, I should say, of replayability in Remnant 2 than there was in Remnant 1. Because now you can start a new character, there's a bunch of different classes, and apparently unlockable classes I've now learned about that you'll get as you progress through the game and can switch to. A ton of different abilities that you can learn, a ton of different traits that you can put points into to spec into different builds. So many different, like, offhand guns, primary guns, melee weapons, accessories, rings, puzzles to complete. And a lot of that stuff you might never see on one run and then encounter it on another and have a completely different experience. And that's so interesting in a Soulsborne type of game. Soulsborne games are the type of game that people replay a lot, right? I've played a bunch of them multiple times. Because you make a new character and you're like, all right, what do I want to do with this character? If you're in, say, Dark Souls 3, do I want to go a pyromancy build, a sorcery build, a dex build, a strength build, a dual wield sort of build? Do I plan to play co-op? Do I want to play maybe a support character then? I mean, then you look at something like Elden Ring and your options expand even further. But it can still wind up feeling stale because you still know what the formula is going to be. You figure out where all the items are. You figure out where all the bosses are. You figure out how to fight them. And while you might have different tools at your disposal and your playstyle could change drastically, once you've played through enough times, you know what's coming. And some of that sense of mystery is lost. Doing it the way that Remnant does it, I think is going to help alleviate that a lot. Now you never know what world you're going to find, what enemies you're going to encounter, what gear you're going to get to drop. And adapting to that on the fly to work with it, with whatever build it is that you're doing, is going to add just an insane amount of replayability. You add into that the drop-in, drop-out co-op, and the way that enemies scale for different members, party members. You have levels, whether you have more or less people, all that type of stuff. There's so much potential here. And we know that people want this type of stuff because you look at things like Elden Ring randomizers, Dark Souls randomizers, and it's like people want to have that sense of discovery and mystery while playing through these games, and Remnant just has it built in. And the most insane thing to me about all of this is you look at what Remnant has to offer, and it looks like AAA. It feels like AAA. Controls are smooth. The voice acting is great. The graphics are beautiful. And then you find out the game's like $50. In this era where at most you can ask for is for a triple game to be 60, and most of them are trying to push for 70 now, and then filled with microtransactions and loot boxes and this, that, and the other thing, DLC and cut content that gets added as DLC, yada, yada, yada. Remnant doesn't have any of that. It's literally just, here is the complete package of a game, go play it. And I'm having a blast, man. Like, I'm having an absolute blast. I cannot wait to be able to get in, do more on stream with Dante, play more co-op, potentially play a little bit more off stream with the second character that I have to learn more about the game. And I can't recommend it highly enough. The game's on Steam, it's on PC, via Steam, you're on PS5, the Xbox series of consoles. If you're at all interested, I highly recommend checking it out. And like, I might be biased since I loved the first game, but what's interesting is you have a lot of people, I mentioned this at the start of the video, who are saying this could be like a Game of the Year contender, and maybe their personal Game of the Year. And a lot of those people are even like high-level content creators for things like Destiny, who I follow because of my interest in Destiny before it started to die. And they're talking about how like this game scratches the Destiny itch for them without any of the BS that I was just talking about, like microtransactions and loot boxes and season passes and all that crap. It just is a good, mechanically solid, interesting world game where you have good shooting mechanics, you've got cool loot drops, you've got builds and story and character interactions, and it's just there. And you just get to experience it. And that's awesome. So I highly, highly recommend it. Obviously, I can't say what the late game is like or what, you know, BS bosses or poorly designed mechanics or encounters or anything there could be. I've got no idea. Maybe none of that exists. Maybe it does. But I've only experienced the first like 3-4 hours of the game. So I can't really say for now. Keep that in mind when you consider potentially picking the game up. Maybe do some more research to see if there's anything like that going on. There have been some technical issues with the game as well, though those are getting quickly patched. At the beginning of my stream, I had one crash where the game like just crashed my whole PC because of a VRAM issue. Don't know if that was the game's fault or my system's fault. I didn't have that happen again. And it's not like it happens with other games, so I'm going to say it maybe was something to do with like a memory leak with the game or something like that. And then I had one other time where the engine just locked up. But those both happened in short succession right after I had started the game. And it was smooth as butter since then, and I haven't had any issues in my off-stream playtime either. So I think any bugs that there are getting patched and dealt with very quickly, and you should hopefully not have any issues with it if you choose to check the game out for yourself. And I highly, highly, highly recommend that you do. It's a cool, dark, brutal, adventurous world with awesome mechanics, and I'm obsessed. And I can't wait to play more. So I just wanted to talk about it, give my initial impressions. If you're at all interested in seeing me and Dante play the game, I will have streams going up fairly regularly whenever we can both, you know, get together to play. Obviously, we're busy adults and everything, so meeting up to play online is a little bit harder than it used to be. But still, we will be doing it fairly regularly. You're going to do the whole game on stream. So if you want to see that and come hang out with us, then make sure that you're subscribed and have notifications on so you'll see when those streams go up. If you have any questions, comments, if you're playing the game for yourself, anything like that, strike up a conversation down below in the comments. I'd love to chat with y'all and see what interesting stuff it is that you guys have learned. But until the next time, my name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so much for watching. I do very much appreciate it. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.